The story of Africa's blood diamonds does not begin with rebels or warlords. It begins much earlier, with foreign powers arriving on African shores, mapping land they did not own, and claiming resources they did not understand. Diamonds were first discovered in southern Africa in the late 1800s. Almost immediately, European investors recognized their value. Mining operations expanded rapidly, often under colonial rule, where African labor was cheap, rights were non-existent, and profits flowed outward. Local populations were pushed aside while foreign companies extracted wealth at industrial scale. This created a dangerous imbalance from the very beginning. Africa supplied the riches, while outsiders controlled the markets. Diamonds became embedded in the global luxury economy. Engagement rings, royal crowns, and elite collections all depended on stones pulled from African soil. Yet for the communities living above these deposits, daily life barely improved. Instead, resentment grew. Weak governance, corruption, and artificial borders left behind by colonial powers created fragile nations. When independence finally came, many African states lacked strong institutions. This vacuum allowed armed groups to rise, exploiting both poverty and mineral wealth. By the late 20th century, diamonds were no longer just symbols of romance and status. They had become currency for war. In Sierra Leone, vast alluvial diamond fields lay close to the surface. Anyone with a shovel could dig. What should have been a blessing became a nightmare. In 1991, the Revolutionary United Front launched an insurgency that plunged the country into chaos. They targeted villages near mining regions, forcing civilians into labor camps. Children were kidnapped and given guns. Boys barely tall enough to carry rifles were ordered to kill. Girls were taken as slaves. The rebels used diamonds to buy weapons from international dealers. Each gem represented bullets, machetes, and grenades. Entire communities were wiped out overnight. One of the most horrifying tactics used during the conflict was systematic amputation. Civilians had hands or arms chopped off as punishment or intimidation. The message was clear: cooperate or suffer. Hospitals overflowed with victims. Families fled into forests. Schools closed. Agriculture collapsed. Sierra Leone became a nation of refugees inside its own borders. At the same time, Angola was trapped in one of Africa's longest civil wars. Rebel forces seized diamond-rich regions and operated massive forced labor mining networks. Prisoners dug pits under armed guard. Many died from exhaustion, disease, or execution. Diamonds from these areas were smuggled out through neighboring countries and sold to international buyers. The profits sustained decades of fighting. Meanwhile, Liberia became a key trafficking corridor. Its leader, Charles Taylor, transformed the country into a laundering hub for conflict diamonds. Stones from multiple war zones were relabeled and exported as legitimate. Taylor used this money to arm militias across West Africa, destabilizing entire regions. What made this system so devastating was how seamlessly it connected local violence to global markets. A diamond mined by a child soldier could travel through several countries, pass through cutting centers in Europe or Asia, and end up in a luxury store within months. By then, its bloody origin was impossible to trace. Much of the world's diamond trade historically passed through Antwerp, where stones were sorted, graded, and sold. Paperwork replaced reality. As long as documents looked clean, buyers asked no questions. Large corporations dominated supply chains. For much of the 20th century, De Beers controlled prices and distribution, shaping public perception of diamonds as rare and precious.
This one is, we can sell them for $20 a gram. This one is 7 points.
Some of the rocks littering these plains turned out to be diamonds. The man who's showing them to me is a former policeman turned dealer who I'll call Mishek. He's agreed to take us to the Marangwe diamond fields, but he's worried about running into soldiers.
Bengakubamba bayakubulala ngoba bengakushaya vele awusuzohambi. Bengakubamba. Awuhambi ungabuyekela ufa awusahambi. Ngoba bayashaya.
As a white woman, I'm too conspicuous, so it's agreed he'll take my Zimbabwean colleague, who'll film with a hidden camera. It's a dangerous journey into an area tightly controlled by Zimbabwean security forces and off limits to the outside world.
We're going to use public transport because we think that public transport is less scrutinized by the police. And then when we get there, we're going to walk in the bush for 2.5 hours, and it will be night by the time we get there.
But behind the polished image was an industry built on exploitation. Miners in conflict zones worked in dangerous conditions without protection. Rivers were diverted. Forests were destroyed. Toxic runoff poisoned farmland. Traditional fishing grounds disappeared. Communities that resisted were crushed. Women were often the silent victims. Many suffered sexual violence during raids. Others became sole providers after their husbands were killed or conscripted. Children grew up without education, surrounded by trauma. An entire generation was lost. For years, these atrocities received little international attention. Wars in Africa rarely made front-page news unless foreign interests were directly affected. But eventually, journalists and humanitarian organizations exposed what was happening. Survivors told their stories. Photos emerged of mutilated civilians and child soldiers holding automatic weapons. Reports showed how diamonds were directly funding violence. Public pressure mounted. The United Nations imposed sanctions on rebel groups and restricted diamond exports from conflict areas. Governments were urged to act. Corporations faced growing scrutiny. This led to the creation of the Kimberley Process in 2003. The system was designed to track rough diamonds from mine to market. Participating countries agreed to certify shipments as conflict-free and refused trade with non-members. It was a historic step. But it was also deeply imperfect. The Kimberley Process only addressed diamonds used to fund rebel movements, not stones mined under abusive labor conditions or environmental destruction. Enforcement depended on governments that were often corrupt or under-resourced. Smuggling continued through unofficial routes.
Since early 2013, the Central African Republic has been torn apart by sectarian conflict. In March of 2013, the Seleka, a mostly Muslim coalition of rebels, overthrew a corrupt government. They swept across the majority Christian country, bringing it close to anarchy. Mostly Christian fighting group, known as the Anti-Balaka, started Due to the conflict, the official mining industry has collapsed. But a lot of the gold and diamonds are still smuggled out from across the country. And according to the United Nations, both Seleka and the Anti-Balaka militias are taking a cut.
It's being played out as an internal political problem. At the end of the day, it's actually just, in my opinion, just control over gold fields and gold concessions. There is serious money to be made in this country, and that has to be seen as one of the key drivers.
So where does that money go?
Well, I think it goes where it went when Bozizi was president, and when Patese was president before him. It goes into their pockets. It's certainly, where it doesn't go is it certainly doesn't benefit the people of the Central African Republic.
Popular culture played a role too. The film Blood Diamond brought the issue into mainstream consciousness, with Leonardo DiCaprio portraying a smuggler navigating Sierra Leone's war zone. While dramatized, the movie introduced millions to the concept of conflict diamonds. But no movie could capture the full reality. Former child soldiers described being forced to kill their neighbors. Mothers spoke of hiding in swamps with newborn babies to escape gunfire. Miners recalled digging for days without food, hoping to find a stone big enough to spare their lives. After the wars officially ended, the suffering did not disappear. Survivors returned to destroyed villages. Infrastructure was gone. Schools had collapsed. Health systems were overwhelmed. Many amputees had no access to prosthetics or rehabilitation.
Explain to us how the fighting has impacted the Muslim community.
Et puis difficulté ti tengo kobe ti nazo te kobe aidape et puis terta melenge akina malade et puis bo ina problem ti i unda ti gana ya yoro konimi.
Historically, we have seen Muslims being involved with a lot of the mining. So there were the middlemen. They have extensive trade networks in Central Africa and in West Africa. And now we've seen with the rise of the anti-Balaka, which is mainly a Christian movement, have literally kicked out, I think, more than 90% of the Muslims.
Boda's Muslims say they've coexisted with others in this region for more than a century. Now they say they'll be killed if they leave their neighborhood. Many have horrific stories of being attacked. Yusufu Musa was captured by Anti-Balaka with his brother. He managed to escape. His friend told us the story.
Il était en brousse. Ils ont tué toute sa famille. Je travaille avec eux dans les mines de diamants. Ils l'ont emmené à la mission. Voilà les gens. Il montre les gens qui ont fait ce travail. Ce sont eux. Voilà tous, il est là. Il l'interroge, il le gronde.
Psychological trauma lingered everywhere. Today, large-scale rebel diamond wars have mostly subsided, but the legacy remains etched into landscapes and lives. Artisanal mining still dominates many regions. Workers earn just a few dollars a day while intermediaries and exporters take the real profits. Children continue to work in hazardous pits. Women wash gravel in polluted rivers. Fatal cave-ins are common. Meanwhile, diamonds still sell for thousands in luxury markets. The promise that natural resources would bring prosperity has not been fulfilled. Instead, diamonds became symbols of how wealth can destroy nations when governance is weak and greed is unchecked. Africa is not poor because it lacks resources. Africa is poor because its resources were taken, exploited, and weaponized. The Blood Diamond era exposed a brutal truth about globalization. Suffering in remote villages can be directly connected to consumer choices thousands of miles away. A ring bought in Europe or North America may carry the invisible weight of lost childhoods, burned homes, and broken families. Even today, many mining communities lack clean water, electricity, and basic health care. Former fighters struggle to reintegrate into society. Young men who grew up knowing only violence face unemployment and hopelessness. Young women carry scars, both physical and emotional, that will never fully heal. Justice has been limited. Few warlords have been held accountable. Compensation for victims is rare. Corporations that profited during the chaos have largely moved on. For survivors, there is no closure, only survival. They remember helicopters hovering over diamond fields. They remember rebels shouting orders in the dark. They remember burying loved ones in shallow graves. And they remember how the world looked away for far too long. Blood diamonds are not just a chapter in African history. They are a warning.
Mais vous trouvez c'est possible de trouver des acheteurs sans les musulmans?
A warning of what happens when natural wealth meets corruption. A warning of how easily children become soldiers when adults fail. A warning that luxury often hides suffering. Today, when someone admires the sparkle of a diamond, they rarely think about amputees in Sierra Leone, forced labor camps in Angola, or refugee trails through Liberia. But those stories remain. They live in the soil. They live in the rivers. They live in the memories of those who survived. Behind every polished gemstone is a journey, one that may include violence, displacement, and loss. And until the global system truly values human life over profit, the shadow of blood diamonds will never fully disappear.